Welcome to Crime and Sacrifice. I'm your host, Brianna, and this is episode 4, Tilly Smith. At the end of 2004, when she was just 10 years old, Tilly Smith, her parents Colin and Penny, and her younger sister Holly visited Thailand for the holidays. It was their first big international trip together, and they were staying at a beachfront hotel in Phuket, an area that was beautiful, like paradise, with stretches of white sand beaches and turquoise open sea, usually very calm. On the day after Christmas, Tilly and her family decided to take a walk along Macau Beach near their hotel. They set off around 8:30 a.m. It was a cloudy, windy day, and for some reason that she couldn't pinpoint, Tilly found herself feeling unsettled, as though there was something in her environment that was off in some way. When she looked out to sea, she noticed that, although there were waves coming in, that there didn't seem to be any moving out. She also noticed a particular fizziness or froth at the edge of the water, and she had the unmistakable impression that she had seen this all before, that there was something very wrong. Tilly started to mention her unsettled feelings to her parents, but they shrugged it off, telling her that it was just the bad weather and choppy sea. She tried to ease her mind, but when she looked out at the water again, she noticed that there was a log that was spinning around and around. And suddenly it hit her, where she had seen this all before. Just 2 weeks prior, during a geography class at Danes Hill School, her teacher, Andrew Kearney, had played the class a video warning of signs to look out for in the minutes before a tsunami strikes. With this realization, Tilly began yelling to her parents and anybody else on the beach, frantically telling them that there was going to be a tsunami, that they needed to get to higher land. At first, her parents were perplexed. Having lived in the UK and far from the threat of tsunamis, they had no real inclination of what she was warning them of. Her distress was obvious to them, and as her younger sister Holly began to cry, Colin tried to calm them both down, and Penny, their mother, tried to carry on and make the most of the morning, assuring Tilly that there was nothing to be worried about. Neither girl could be consoled, and Colin decided to take Holly back to the hotel to try to calm down her now hysterical crying. Her mother Penny insisted on continuing her walk, much to Tilly's panic. She began to plead with her mother to come back to the hotel with her, begging her over and over again, telling her that she wouldn't survive if she kept going. I can relate to the mom, of course. Sometimes it's easy to write off something like this as irrational, especially when it's coming from a kid. She didn't take her daughter's warnings seriously and insisted that she would keep going. Finally, when they got to a point that was over a mile from the hotel, Tilly begged her mom one last time and turned around to run back to the hotel on her own. She was dismayed to see all of the other people that were still out on the beach as she headed back. When she made it back to the hotel, Tilly noticed that her dad was there, now speaking to a Japanese security guard. The guard looked out to the waters and saw that Tilly was right. He was reminded that there had been reports of a large earthquake in the Indian Ocean and immediately went into action. He bolted to the beach and began yelling, "Tidal wave, tsunami!" And the people still on the beach began to run, trying to get to higher ground. Tilly's mother Penny heeded the warning too. She was one of the last to leave the beach, and Tilly was terrified that she would not make it back in time. It was then that Tilly saw one of the final warning signs that she had been alerted to in her geography class, as the ocean seemed to recede far away from the shoreline, which meant that the tsunami would crash into the shore soon. Tilly yelled for everybody around her to run as families and children all ran with her toward the hotel lobby. She had lost sight of her own family by this point, crammed with hundreds of others in the lobby, as a wall of water came flooding into the hotel and crashing at its walls. Luckily, the hotel was on high enough ground that it didn't overwhelm the families huddling inside. Soon afterward, Tilly was reunited with her dad and sister, and, to her great relief, her mom Penny was with them. They hugged each other and cried. It wasn't until they saw news reports of the devastation in countries all around the Indian Ocean that they realized just how lucky they were. The 2004 earthquake and subsequent tsunami was one of the worst natural disasters in recorded history, wiping away entire families and towns and leading to a staggering and incomprehensible loss of life, over 225,000 people. Tilly's education and quick thinking saved not only the lives of her family, but the lives of everybody on the beach that day. Macau Beach was one of the few areas in the affected zone that reported no casualties that day. But it wasn't just Tilly's education, her ability to apply what she'd learned, but her insistence to make herself heard. Tilly would not let her parents ignore her, and she insisted with such conviction that her dad probably felt he had little choice but to warn the security guard. It's really a remarkable show of character and courage on her part. Though Tilly attributes a lot of that day to luck and to her teacher, Andrew Kearney, on giving her class such a vivid and memorable lesson. In the aftermath of the devastation, Tilly's story was one that really moved people, many of whom were in mourning. She was dubbed the Angel of the Beach and was presented with several awards and honors in the years that followed, winning the Child of the Year award from a French children's newspaper and accepting an invitation to visit the UN and meet with former President Bill Clinton. She was also invited back on the one-year anniversary of the disaster to read part of a poem in a ceremony honoring victims, along with relatives and survivors. Here's the line from the poem that she read. It wasn't devastation or death that won that day. It was humanity that triumphed, the shining victory of generosity, courage, and love. That's it for this week. Thank you all so much for listening and for the ratings, reviews, and support. It really means a lot to me, and it's what makes creating this show worth it. You can find more information about this and all episodes on our website at crimeandsacrifice.com, including links to all of my sources, photos, and transcripts. I also wanted to mention that next week, we're kicking off a 2 or 3 episode series. This is going to be a rough one, a deep dive into the case of a serial killer that I grew up hearing about, but that I haven't heard covered in many places before. I had the chance to get to know a lot more about the victims in the time that I've been researching this, and my ideas about the case have changed a lot. So look out for that. Once the series ends, we'll be back to alternating between true crime and incredible stories of hope. What kind of person will you choose to be?